Hello everyone, I am Duke, and in today's video we're going to look at some of the lore snippets we have on the Martyrs and Saints of Trench Crusade. If you're new to the channel or the world of Trench Crusade, then welcome, and for my returning viewers, who's your favourite from this list? Let us know in the comments below. If you're enjoying my content, then please consider becoming a member or supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/feelnopaint. From there you can join the Discord and download exclusive art, as well as helping the community grow and supporting the channel. With the intro out of the way, what are we actually going to be talking about in this video? Well, as the title says, the Saints and Martyrs of Trench Crusade have been alluded to in art and lore a fair few times so far, so let's dive into a selection of the ones I feel we have the most information on, or which have had the largest impact on the setting so far. This isn't going to be an extensive list, so I may leave one or two out, but we will explore them in future videos when we have more lore on the subject. First off, I want to start with a fairly simple one that only has a few brief mentions in the lore for the combat medics. Saint Cosmas appears to be the patron saint of combat medics in Trench Crusade, specifically the Sisters of the Order of Saint Cosmas. This holy order is dedicated to offering medical aid to the faithful they find in no man's land. This even leads them to take a modified Hippocratic oath and compels them to aid any injured faithful soldier of any nation that they find, no matter the danger that offering that aid would put them into. Their oath also compels them to show no mercy or pity when ending the lives of heretics they find in a similar position, so depending on which side of the war you're on, they're either a knife-wielding Mother Teresa in a gas mask, or Jack the Ripper with a bedside manner. Given expert medical training, the combat medics do all of this in the name of Saint Cosmas, and they can often be seen on the front lines in field hospitals, or even conducting life-saving surgeries in the mud and blood of battle. What we can assume from this is that Saint Cosmas is some form of patron saint of medicine. Perhaps they were a nun with medical knowledge, or a gifted doctor who joined a warband only to save their lives countless times. We don't know much about Cosmas beyond their name, but it's undeniable they have had a great impact on the setting, since the Sisters of St. Cosmas are not only impressive medical mercenaries available for Trench Pilgrims or New Antioch warbands, but they also help to staff the Great Hospice of New Antioch, which is at the literal cutting edge of medicine in the Great War. Next up is a saint that we know a little more about, one who rose from a simple soldier to the founder of a special forces unit under the direct command of the Duke of New Antioch himself. Of course, this could be none other than the legendary founder of the Red Brigade, Saint Ernest. But given I've recently covered Saint Ernest in our look at the Warhounds of the Red Brigade, I won't go too much into his lore here, but we will cover the basics. Saint Ernest's story begins at the Second Battle of Acre, where, after the death of his brother Wilhelm, he picked up his brother's blood-stained helmet and went on a rampage that would have brought a tear to the eye of a demon of wrath. Literally covered in gore from head to toe, Ernest was the only survivor of either side of that conflict, so taking this as a sign from God, he collected his brother's bloodstained equipment and set off back to New Antioch. Now, whether or not Ernest was actually blessed by God that day or just incredibly lucky, I don't think it really matters. This rambling madman covered in more blood than a butcher's apron stumbled into New Antioch like he had just come off the worst slip and slide you can imagine. Most likely stinking like a slaughterhouse, the charismatic Ernest managed to tell his tale to just about anyone who passed by. Hopefully he had had a good bath before this stint as a street preacher, but given the way the pilgrims look, I wouldn't rule out him standing there screaming about demons in the market just covered in blood. Whatever actually happened, whether divine intervention was involved or not, Ernest's story grew and he gathered a congregation of people to him who felt a kinship through their own sense of loss. Shortly after, they set off into the Levant and caused so much chaos to the heretics and demons that the story of their fearless warband of lunatics eventually reached the ducal palace. Not long after that, they were officially recognised as a unit in the ducal armed forces. In fact, they proved so invaluable at completing the most dangerous missions that they were even allowed to garrison within the ducal palace and have their pick of the kennels and the warhounds within. The Red Brigade has since gone on to be one of the most effective and famous special forces units in the Faithful Nations, and serves the ducal palace directly to this day. The story of Saint Ernest just goes to show that with enough bravery and luck, anyone can make it to greatness in Trench Crusade. They might just need to go through their own personal hell first. And speaking of warrior saints, the next up is Saint Dominica of the Zweihander, who has quite possibly the most badass artworks of any individual character in the setting, and if you disagree, then you're a heretic. Now, Dominica is another of the saints we don't know much about, but quite possibly the one that many of us want the lore for more than any other. She was so gifted in the use of her signature two-handed blade that anyone who saw her in battle would swear she was blessed by God himself with such mastery and prowess. While we don't know much about how Dominica lived, we do know how she died. At the Battle of Absalom, the saint charged into a horde of the Temple of Metamorphosis. While I'm sure her epic last stand was nothing short of worthy of its own anime recreation, she was ultimately killed by a pupil seraph as the charge faltered and she was overrun. And going away from saints for a second, I want to talk about a group of people who are considered legendary in the world of Trench Crusade, but I honestly think that is more of a cautionary tale than a glorious retelling of their deeds. The legendary 17 Martyrs, for me, are quite honestly the most idiotic group of people that we've been told about so far in the lore. This group of 17 preachers set off on a mission to the earthly domains of hell. Were they on a mission of destruction? Were they on a special forces style clandestine operation? Nope. They set off with the hopes of converting the heretics back to the light of God. This went about as well as you'd expect because all 17 of them were rounded up, tortured and brought to the point of death. From here, hanging on to life by the thinnest of margins, all 17 of them were crammed into profane altars where they have been continuously tortured from that moment on, held on the brink of death since that day. Hell must find this really funny as well because it's not exactly like they set off 2 months before the story picks up in the present day. No, the 17 Martyrs set off in 1117, which means they've been stuck screaming their little heads off and presumably regretting their decisions for nearly 700 years. But moving on from the downright dopey, we have our next saint that I like to think only exists to show the 17 Martyrs how it's really done. The Butchered Saint is an interesting, terrifying, somewhat confusing and completely gruesome one. This saint, along with the third Metachrist, is venerated by the Stigmatic nuns, and looking at her artwork it's pretty easy to see why. No one really knows who the saint was. Some think she was martyred by heretics only to be kept alive by the grace of God. Others say she was so angry with someone or something that her unfinished business brought her back to the land of the living like some form of spirit of vengeance. The stories of the Butchered Saint say that she appears to answer the desperate prayers of those who have been captured for slaughter by the heretics. At the crucial hour of need, the saint pops up, death mask on and half of her missing, to bring some justice to those who would harm the faithful. Apparently her feet never touch the ground, and barbed wire is about as effective at stopping her as a no diving sign at your local pool. Surprisingly, she's said to be very softly spoken, which must confuse the crap out of everyone given she doesn't appear to have any lungs, a voice box, or any internal organs at all for that matter. She whispers benedictions that are said to melt heretic armour, causing them to die an agonising death, while the burning metal recreates the crown scene from the Game of Thrones. If any heretic thinks they might be able to get away or get a lucky shot off to kill the saint before they burn alive in their own armour, they can think again, because their ammunition ignites in the magazines, only adding to the death and destruction brought by the appearance of the saint. Then, as every heretic in her vicinity is reduced to smouldering slag, she buggers off just about as quickly as she arrived, the scent of sandalwood filling the air and gold leaf drifting from the sky. I feel like the gold leaf in particular is a nice touch, and the smell of sandalwood is probably there to offset the awful smell of burning heretic. Either way though, she drops in, saves the day, and then leaves literal ruination in her wake. And then the last saint we will look at for today is perhaps the most impactful we've seen in the setting so far. He isn't a charismatic warrior saint, a renowned healer, or even a localized nuclear bomb in a porcelain mask. This saint is Saint Elegaius. Now, another one where not much is known about them, Elegaius is said to be the saint that guided the war prophet Angelos to the discovery of orichalcum steel. Given that orichalcum steel is an alloy imbued with literal divine essence, that has gone on to be the cornerstone of the most powerful suits of armour available to the faithful nations, from the hulls of Anchorites to the Maximilian Knights, and the walking bulwarks of New Antioch's heavy mechanized infantry. Saying that Elegaius has had an impact is a bit of an understatement. Without Elegaius, we can be fairly certain that the forces of the faithful would have never had access to armour capable of withstanding the weaponry of demons and heretics. Orichalcum steel is considered to be near indestructible and capable of shrugging off some of the most devastating weaponry seen in the setting so far. Arguably, without Saint Elegaius, the war would have been over far before now, despite the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent constantly playing who can stab the most people in the back this week. But what do you think? Which of these saints and martyrs is the most impactful in the setting in your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to discover the lore for the mechanized heavy infantry, the powerful soldiers clad in the orichalcum steel we mentioned earlier, you can find out more about them and this divine metal by clicking the link to your left. Alternatively, if you want to dive into more lore for settings like 1490 Doom, Conflict 47 or even more Trench Crusade, you can do so by clicking the link to your right. Don't forget to sign up as a member and jump into the Discord, and for discounts on your hobby supplies, check out my affiliate links in the video description. With that, I'll say thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon.